Welcome, friends. Good afternoon. It is my absolute pleasure to be here today to speak with you. Now, typically at this event, those of you who have been here before at our annual lunch, we often share an update on our programs and activities at the foundation that have been made possible by donors over the years. And these programs are hugely important. Let me get this right. Can everybody hear me okay? These programs are hugely important, and they add to the quality of life in our region. They are an essential part of what the foundation does and will continue to do. But as you all know, this year was not a typical year for our community. We experienced a crisis as a community that got a national focus, and your community foundation found itself positioned to step up as a leader in new ways and to be called upon to respond in ways that we had not been called upon before. This is the story that I want to share with you today. I'm going to set the stage a little bit. It's last year, it's March, and we're at our annual lunch. We, as a foundation, were celebrating 50 years joyously of serving this community as a philanthropic institution. We shared a video that chronicled our history, that shared our tradition of giving, and that shared about our evolving work to improve quality of life in the region. We were excited by the forward momentum of our team, of our grant making, and of just all of the work that our partners were doing to have an impact on lives in the community. For most of us, we couldn't imagine the tragedy that we'd all soon experience. August 11th and 12th of last year were painful and horrifying days for our community. We saw violence and terror, and we lost 3 lives: Heather Heyer, Lieutenant H.J. Cullen, and Trooper Burke Bates. For the foundation, the ground had shifted beneath us, and what we thought we saw and that we knew and that we understood about our community changed. Not only that, and in many ways, nothing new was before us, but the fissures had exposed old structures in ways we hadn't seen them before. And not only that, but as an institution interconnected with our surroundings in a particular history of place and time, we had an important opportunity to take a deeper look at ourselves, at our work, and at our way forward. In the initial phase of responding to the crisis of August, we learned a lot. Through our work with survivors of the car attack, we saw the resilience of so many who endured multiple surgeries and a complete disruption, if not a permanent change to their lives. These are our neighbors who are now living with long-standing, lifelong scars, chronic pain, and post-traumatic stress. 10 months later, many don't know what their future will be. I visited a friend who was in one of the cars on 4th Street that day, and she suffered an injury resulting in lifelong and excruciating pain. She experiences flashbacks and anxiety and depression. She's also grieving the loss of a career as a paramedic. And a week after the car attack, despite her pain, she proudly passed her EMT exam to become a paramedic. But she was unable to take advantage of the opportunities that were lined up for her because of her injuries. She is receiving support for living expenses through the funds available to survivors, but she's now navigating a tough new world of doctor's appointments and paperwork and a few good days, but many more hard days of pain. She's trying to be a mom and all the while fighting to stay strong and not feel like a burden to her family. And as the 1-year anniversary approaches and the trial is scheduled for November, she experiences new waves of fear, uncertainty, and emotion. But she is exceptionally strong, and she's surviving in an exceptional way. But like many whose lives were directly touched, she carries deep wounds. There are survivors and families of survivors here today, and I want to acknowledge you, your unique pain and loss, and just to commend you for your resilience and commitment to continue taking each day as they come. In the wake of August 11th and 12th, the foundation received many generous donations originating from our region and across the nation. Individuals gave, businesses gave, private and corporate foundations gave. There were GoFundMe pages, local business fundraisers, there were merchandise sales and nonprofit events, all responding to this crisis. Dave Matthews Band and other performers held a concert that resulted in considerable funding. This incredible display of generosity, over $1.5 million that ultimately was housed at the foundation in the HEAL Fund, the Concert for Charlottesville Fund, and the Unity Seville Fund, was the largest opportunity in our community to respond to the terrorism and tragedy that we collectively experienced. Our immediate priority was to ensure that survivors of the car attack had exactly what they needed to recover. In partnership with the Pathways program at the Haven, we have been directing funds to support survivors by covering living expenses, meeting recovery needs, and helping each individual find a way forward. This support has been complementary to the many other sources of financial and emotional support provided by other fundraisers, the faith and activist communities, and nonprofit providers. Through our work with survivors, we also learned that dollars weren't all that was needed. Some of the funds are supporting a dedicated navigator at Partner for Mental Health who is helping our friends transition during this important time in their lives, regardless of what that looks like for them. For some, it means new work skills to accommodate a change in physical ability, and for others, it means transitioning to longer forms of support. There are some of you here today who've been working tirelessly with us and with survivors to ensure that they have what they need, and I want to thank you and say it's an honor to be serving with you in this way. Also, in the wake of August 11th and 12th, our whole community was hurting. As part of the rapid response work, we made grants to support organizations that were serving both youth and adults who were coping with the tragedy, as well as first responders who had cared for people during the violence. Now, we also learned that while our whole community was hurting, our hurt was not the same. Just as happens in any family, each member experiences and feels things differently, regardless of whether they were all present at the same time for an event. The hurt across our community was experienced differently. For some, the shock of the violence, the feelings of vulnerability, and the disruption of a certain sense of normal shook deeply these community members. Some couldn't believe that this had happened in their town, and their hurt was rooted in the reality that their world was turned upside down and that the future was uncertain. For others, the hurt was a deep trauma that is triggered by images of tiki torch-lit rallies, Klansmen in hoods, and a persistent feeling of being the other. These community members were deeply impacted and troubled by the events of that day, but they were not surprised. Some community members felt invisible, some felt helpless, and many felt outrage. It's become clear to us at the foundation that we have to see our community differently for all the many populations that we are. The notion of a universal experience of community just doesn't work. In order to move forward together and to truly empathize, we have to acknowledge that due to historical and structural reasons, people are situated differently and they experience our community differently, and we can't overlook that fact. We also can't overlook the reality that our community doesn't work the same way for everyone. Individual acts of bigotry and expressions of hatred are deeply troubling, and we have to denounce those. But individual acts of racism and anti-Semitism are not the sum of marginalization experienced by people in our community. There remain structural, long-standing, silent mechanisms of exclusion that have been baked into our society and its institutions from the beginning. There are persistent racial disparities in health, education, policing and incarceration, economic opportunity and mobility, housing, and wealth building. Deeper, more structural causes are the reason for these significant disparities and that they persist. It was important to the foundation in our response and what we were hearing from the community about what they needed from us in order to move forward was that some of the funds would be directed toward addressing those structures of exclusion. We made targeted grants to support the Jewish community, and we also held a grant round that focused on 3 areas of work to address inequities faced by people of color. These areas of work included increasing diversity and inclusion in community decision-making processes, advancing racial equity in a range of outcome areas, and increasing the education of structural racism and its impacts, and telling more of our collective history. It was also important to us, as we were embarking on this, that we thought carefully about how to make this opportunity as accessible as possible. To help us understand how best to do that, we spent time relationship building and listening to people who had never applied to the foundation before. Ultimately, we received proposals from both organizations and individuals, which was entirely new for us. We set the award size at an amount that was manageable by both grassroots and large initiatives. We released our guidelines in English and in Spanish, and we announced them through traditional and targeted channels. We also partnered with the Center for Nonprofit Excellence to provide grant writing help. And we received applications handwritten and typed, hand-delivered, sent in the mail, emailed, and we received them in all those ways. And we engaged a fantastic group of community leaders to advise us on our funding decisions. The results were encouraging. We received over 100 applications requesting $3 million in support. People of all ages applied. Half were from initiatives led by people of color, and over half were from people who had never applied to the foundation before. Most of the initiatives had been happening all along. They weren't just new in response to last summer. And what we learned was that these initiatives just weren't on the radar of the Community Foundation. These were initiatives that were seeking support to advance and promote small businesses, help returning citizens overcome insurmountable and exclusionary barriers, and tell aspects of our collective history that have often been omitted. All of the initiatives, regardless of the race of the people leading them, had this in common. There was a genuine desire to work on things in our community that would make it work better for everyone. Race is a hard topic. I know I'm not saying anything that no one in this room hasn't thought about before. Race is a hard topic. It's difficult to talk about. It's hard to know what to say and when and to whom. And it's nearly impossible to truly understand someone else's experience. It's hard to know how to show compassion and empathy and to build people up and encourage them and to communicate exactly what it was you intended to communicate. Race is absolutely a social construct, but it has real impact on people's lives. It's a hard topic, but this is not a reason to avoid it. And that's what was so moving about the response to this grant round. There are so many people who wanted to address it and wanted to step up and work on this issue. It was undeniable to us that there is a desire in our community to make it work for everyone. And that's what we saw in the response, and we should all be encouraged by that. In the coming weeks, $900,000 will flow out from the Heal Charlottesville and the Concert for Charlottesville Fund to more than 40 community initiatives. And we just learned that an anonymous donor has provided an additional $100,000 to support the grant partners. That's $1 million going out to our community. Yeah. $1 million going out to the community to move it forward. These initiatives will be led by members of our community of all colors and all ages. They'll be targeted to specific populations and focus on making our community one that is inclusive and that's a place where we all belong. Now, while the events of last summer have caused us to look at ourselves, at the foundation, and our community differently, we have remained committed to our work with donors and nonprofits. We've been reflecting on all of our work and our existing approach, and we've made changes to serve you better. We've launched a donor education series to offer more opportunities for fund holders and donors to meet one another and to connect on issues that they care about. And this fall, fund holders and donors will be able to review and respond to grant applications that we receive at the foundation in order to flow more dollars out to the community and to build greater connections between philanthropically minded businesses and individuals and those organizations that are working hard to make a difference. We've also enhanced our resources to nonprofits and are deepening our partnerships and celebrating partner impact. We are extremely excited by the work before us. At the foundation, we are on a journey, and we're exploring what our role can be as we serve this community. We take very seriously this important opportunity to reflect on ourselves as an institution one that is situated in a particular position in our region. We are a grant maker, a steward of generous giving. We are an advisor to other philanthropists. We are also a partner to many community-based initiatives. We have a mission to improve quality of life in the region, and we believe that to mean all people in our region. I don't stand before you with answers as to exactly what that will mean for the foundation going forward, but I can say that we are committed to taking a deeper look and to continuing this journey of reflecting on our work. Now, I hope you will agree that is often the case in difficult times that your community foundation matured a little bit this year. We were in a position to step up when our community needed us, and we do not take that lightly, nor the responsibilities associated with that kind of leadership role. We do know that we were prepared to take on this role because of so many of you in this room who have been long-standing supporters and friends who have built this foundation and prepared it for a moment like this to be able to step up and step in. We want to thank you for our confidence in us. I want to close by just saying thank you to everyone for being here, for being a part of a community that is working hard to transform our region in positive ways. We are honored to be your community foundation, and we look forward to our journey ahead with you. Thank you.